Lads, Christian, the Havre Card Man from Fusion YGO, coming back at you with another video this week. And if you couldn't tell by the title, we are going to be officially launching my Scrapping Up the Rank series. But before I get into telling you guys any of what this series is about or getting into the actual breakdown of the video, there is one announcement I need to make. Unfortunately, signups are now officially done for the Holiday Cup, but for those that signed up, if you guys haven't seen it yet, this is the official prize that we have for first place. So if you guys did not sign up this year around for Holiday Cup, be sure to pay attention next year so you guys can be ready to actually get into the tournament. But this will be going to our first place winner this year. I am calling this the Desires playmat. It was designed by Pal Manga Mats over on Facebook. Definitely go check them out. Excellent quality playmats and just absolutely stunning arts with the manga cards. But with that out of the way, now we can actually get into what this video is. So this whole series of scrapping up the ranks is, the whole point is that I'm going to be taking my scrap toolbox deck, which if you guys haven't already seen, there's going to be a deck profile in the card right up here. I am not Patrick, I can get the right side. There will be a link to the deck profile right up there for you guys if you want to go check that out and see what this deck is all about. But I'm going to be taking this deck onto Yu-Gi-Oh! Omega and doing my best to try to getting up to master rank. And so far, we've actually been doing pretty good. Most of these games are going to be played off camera, but you guys might have actually already seen the two live streams that I did. One that I did playing a few matches, and then one I did as a recap going over the matches I've played so far. Going over the replays, all the different plays that I made, you know, mistakes I made, things that I did well, just kind of how the matchups went. It goes really in depth and it takes a lot longer than these. These are just going to be the stat breakdown videos, the recaps at the end of a certain period of time, which is going to be every 2 weeks roughly, and I'm going to try to fit 15 to 16 games somewhere in there within a 2-week period, and I'll be getting these videos out to you guys twice a month with updates. So far with the scrap deck, actually, I've got the statistics right here. I'm going to go ahead and pull them up. So I'm just gonna, as I go through these, I'm gonna kind of break down the matchup really quick, you know, explain overall how well it went, how the two decks interacted together, and give you guys the actual score of what happened. And then at the end, I will let you know my win-loss ratio, and then I will also give you my updated rank. Alright, so first up, we ended up playing against a Cyber Dark, Cyber Dragon deck. I forced them to go first after winning the die roll, and it didn't go too well for them. I ended up cleaning up pretty easily. You know, Cyber Dragon being known for a really good going second OTK deck, but also can set up fairly decent for a going first control board. The Cyber Dark, I think, kind of threw it off a little bit, so the deck just didn't have as much balance as it normally does. And that little bit of off-kilter that it had gave us an easy 2-0 cleanup against this deck, even with having no prior experience going against any Cyber Dark stuff, so that was really cool. I'm guessing they also just didn't really know what to do against my deck, and they didn't get to set anything up going game 2. After they lost game 1, they still ended up going first. I'm guessing their Cyber Dark plays they were counting on getting disruption for, and they couldn't get anywhere. So I really think that player might have had a better time going second. We might have been in more trouble there, especially him having known that we chose to go second the first game. Alright, second matchup was against Eldritch. I'm not gonna lie, this was actually a really tough game. I went 2-1. Honestly, I probably wouldn't have done as well. I feel bad for this, and this is why I've changed things. This was in the first 3 matches that I did on a live stream. I had Patrick with me helping me out. Not really helping me out like coaching wise, but like, you know, he was just kind of speaking out loud, and some of the things he said I kind of, you know, played with. I used those in my interactions, unfortunately, and I feel disingenuous for that. So unfortunately, I did win this game 2-1, and it was kind of to some of Patrick's advice. Like, I could have come to the conclusion on a lot of the stuff that he said at some point in time, but I might not have come to it as quickly, and I might have actually ended up misplaying more. So if you guys don't want to count that match, I totally understand. I'm just including it in here because it was technically a match that I had. And next up was Machina. This one was interesting. I ended up going 1-2 against this deck. They actually cleaned me pretty good games 2 and 3, or games 1 and 3, because I'm pretty sure I won game 2. But even, yeah, going second against this deck still did not like fare well for me, even though it is kind of, Machina is kind of a going second deck. The mirror match type was kind of interesting. He just played around a lot more with the deck than I thought. I haven't played pure Machina as much as I really wish I had. Especially with the new support in Ruin Force and playing around more Metal Cruncher. Overall, a really fun matchup, and I think it actually played out really well. It was really cool to see that deck could do something, so I'm not even mad about losing that game, to be honest. Next up is Trickstar. Easy cleanup 2-0. I mean, a control burn deck. I've faced it a dozen times thanks to Patrick and friends. Well, some of my other friends, I should say. I've faced this deck enough that I know how annoyed I am by it, but it wasn't enough to stop me. And actually, one of the games, this Trickstar player ended up helping me out with the Trickstar Reincarnation. He actually unbricked my hand with that card, so that worked really well. That's why a lot of the ratios I have with this deck are actually really nice. So that being said, there wasn't a whole lot there. It was really easy to break their board. You know, when going game 2, I decided in more back row hate, and like it was an easy cleanup, so not even a problem there at all. Game 5 was actually PK Fire. This was another rough one. I went 1-2 with this one. I think I won the singular game, which was probably game 2, only because he didn't know what the deck did necessarily. He saw a lot of the cards that I played, and a lot of them made sense, but this was one of those examples, I believe, where Nightmare Griffin actually stole the game because he tried to summon a Zeus, but he didn't link it, so he couldn't use his effect to clear my field, and it kind of screwed him a little bit. So I think that was kind of where I stole the game there, but overall, he just kind of had the better strategy. Setting up first, he had back row, he had front row. It was a little bit too much for my deck to deal with all at once, because even if I dealt with the front row, I still had to worry about the Fog Blades and Forbidden Droplets. If I dealt with the back row, I'd still have to worry about Appaloosas, Destroy Phoenix Enforcer, and all this. So it's just, Phantom Knights is an explosive deck and is kind of hard to deal with. In the future, I think it'll be an easier matchup now that I'm a little more experienced with it, and I kind of know where to hit it a little bit better. So that'll help a lot. Next up was Despia Shadal. I actually, at this point, I kind of went on a little bit of a rut. I went 0-2 against Despia Shadal, which I shouldn't have done as bad with because Patrick has played this deck a couple of times, but I had a couple of bricky, unplayable hands. I can't even just say it on that. I did make misplays throughout these games, stuff that cost me when it shouldn't have. Shadal is just a really strong control deck, and Despia is a nice engine to kind of supplement that and make it much more viable. And of course, leaving only an IP Masquerena on field against a deck that has Shadal Fusion, just not a good idea. So that one kind of cost me there. I definitely had a few misplays in this one. Stuff that I could look forward to correcting in the future, which actually I kind of do later down the line, and we'll get to that soon. Alright, so next up was Sword Soul, being one of the new top decks of the format. I'm going to say top decks in quotation marks, because honestly, this deck did not really prove itself all that well. It like set up 1 or 2 disruptions. All it took was a Kaiju or a Dark Ruler. I was off to the races. I broke their board in seconds and then just OTK'd them right after, or established a board in the case of Dark Ruler that they just could not play through. Once again, players not reading Griffin, always the most hilarious thing, in my opinion. So that was like an easy 2-0 cleanup. Didn't even have any issues there. Next up was actually a Utopia deck, and this is probably the first Utopia deck I've seen since its release that did not play F-Zero. Instead, he would go first, try to set up just a really big boy with some of the ZW equip spells in the back row. One of them being a negate, the other two being protections. And it just wasn't enough for him. You know, if I Kaiju'd, if I got rid of the back row, it was really, really easy to break his board and just OTK him. I didn't even need Dark Rulers. It was just absolutely absurd how easy it was to get past him. There was one game that, like, I almost thought he might bounce back for a second, and then the following turn I just said, no, never mind, this is my game. So that was a nice easy 2-0 cleanup as well. And now we're just kind of rolling on with the Rogue and Jank for a little bit. We had a Sacred Beast matchup, which also went 2-0. This one was kind of interesting because Nightmare Griffin actually didn't affect the deck as much. Of course, their big Sacred Beast boys are affected by that, and they can't activate their effects, but when you have big monsters like that are 4K bodies, it doesn't matter. They'll just attack right over that Griffin. Unfortunately, I didn't have to deal with that. The only issue with the Griffin thing is that all of his other monsters, like the Beckoning Beasts, or all of the different beasts, they just normal and tribute summon. So they didn't really matter under the Griffin, but thankfully I had the Appaloosa to back me up and keep me going for going first, I believe. For going second, it was really easy. He didn't establish much of a board at all. It was like a Hamon, one of the beasts, and then a Fallen Paradise with us, you know, summoning of the Sacred Beast. He had an okay board, but it was not at all hard to break by my deck standards. So once again, another easy 2-0 cleanup there, and then following that was actually a Necros matchup, another deck I've never played against, and I know that this used to be a really, really big strategy. Unfortunately, not against Scraps. This was another easy 2-0 cleanup. It took like no effort at all. Sure, he'd set up Unicorn and like a negate, and you'd think it would be hard to play through, but when you open up Dark Rulers and Kaijus, and then you just have board breakers past that, it doesn't matter. You slap down that Dark Ruler or you kaiju away the Unicorn, you're just fine to go off. So that was really kind of nice. And game number 12 here was actually Resonator Chaos Lair. It was kind of just a Mod Podge of decks, a whole bunch of different strategies thrown together, but it actually surprisingly worked. Chaos Ruler is a card and a really good one, as well as all of the, some of the Red Dragon Archfiends actually. So this deck was a really interesting matchup. There was a lot of interaction, but unfortunately in the end we lost 1-2. But it was still a really good game. It was really interesting to see what it could do, and it was, you know, I knew what a lot of the cards did individually, but it was so hard to like play correctly through all of it because there was just so many different things going on. You know, it was hard to like nail down any one way to play. And next up is my other favorite deck. We got to play against Prank Kids, and boy, can I tell you, this was an easy 2-1 matchup. So there were a couple of struggle points. There were, you know, the one game that they won, they just kept getting their snowballing advantage, and it screwed me over. But when I actually got the games that I wanted and I opened up right, it was so easy to deal with because I know the interaction points in Prank Kids. I know where to stop them and like what to do against them. I think the one game I lost is when I actually was up against a Battle Butler with a Meow Meow in Graveyard and a Thunder Dragon Fusion so they could follow up with the corridor. They didn't have to worry about banishing the Meow Meow. So they got to double Battle Butler me. I thought I could bait it out well enough and then still play, but unfortunately his disruption was just enough to disrupt my turn, and he ended up just cleaning me up the next turn. So that one was a little bit rougher, but the other two games actually went really smoothly and really easily. My favor. There we go. So it kind of worked out in the end, and once again, Prank Kids, I know the deck well enough that it was not too hard to play around. Next up was an interesting one. This was Guru Dragoon Turbo, and when I say Dragoon Turbo, like they didn't just play 3 Red Eyes Fusion, they were also running Red Eyes Insight along with the Pot of Duality and Prosperities in their deck, so they could just dig as much as they wanted to get. Well, I guess it wasn't Duality, sorry, they had Extrav and Prosperity in this deck, so that they could dig for that Dragoon summon. It was just Dragoon.deck, and that was solely the reason they won. I would actually have to say, unfortunately, Dragoon was the biggest reason they won. Summon Limit is also a card, and that kind of screwed us over. So, unfortunately, we ended up getting O2'd by Dragoon Turbo Guru Control. It was not fun. That's all I can say is that matchup was not fun. Even after citing in back row hate, there was just nothing I could do. So that being said, next up, we kind of came back a little bit. We got to play against Pure Shaddoll, at least as far as I'm aware, and we went 2-0 against that deck. This poor player, unfortunately, we didn't get to play out the full match, like the actual 2 out of 3 games, because I beat them game 1 after outing their Winda 3 times on my turn. Somehow they managed to turbo out Winda 3 times during my turn, and I outed it each and every single time. The player got annoyed by it, and then he ended up just rage quitting and walking away from his computer, I guess, because we ran out of time in the side deck, and we ran out of time in the game when he was going first. So that was unfortunate to see that player just kind of give up like that. I would have liked to see that matchup go all the way through, but you know what? We're going to take the ranking because we're trying to get to Master here. And unfortunately, we had the same issue back-to-back with a Mystic Mind player. Although this one didn't have their Winda outed 3 times, they unfortunately did not read their field barrier, and they got too greedy. They ended up activating a Metaverse in their spell and trap card zone, and for whatever reason, instead of leaving the Mystic Mind that they already had on field that had currently been locking me down for 6 to 7 turns, they decided to get rid of it for a face-down Mystic Mind, and they can't activate a new field spell because the last part of field barrier's effect is new field spells cannot be activated. So they locked themselves out, but they had 2 Shard of Greeds on field that they were going to wait another 2 turns to get the draws from. I don't know why, but apparently they just decided to get rid of their Metaverse, or activate their Metaverse, so that they could clear up the zone for the Shard of Greed to draw 2 cards later, even though their whole win con was decking me out with Mystic Mind. So I ended up OTKing the next turn because they didn't have anything to stop me from doing so, I guess. So that is actually the end of the matches that we had this time around for this episode. Let me know what you guys think of this. Oh, I also need to give you the final stats. So the actual final stat breakdown, we had 10 wins and 6 losses at the end of this. Overall, feeling pretty good. Our starting rank was, of course, 1000 because that's the base MMR rank for Yu-Gi-Oh! Omega. And we are currently sitting at an 1108, still in the bronze rank, but nearing our way up to, I believe, silver. So that is actually quite incredible. And we've got a lot more games coming on. Like I said, this will be like a bi-weekly video. I'll be doing this. I'll try to get this one uploaded as soon as I can so that you guys can enjoy all this and stay up to date on the series. Like I said, there's going to be live streams around this. I'm not going to be able to play every game live, though, just because schedule conflicts. And sometimes I can only sneak in a game here or there, and it doesn't really make much sense to stream, especially if it's like 5 in the morning. You know, who's going to be watching that other than people on the other side of the world? So just by that logic, I'll try to dedicate some time to actually live stream some games for this series, but otherwise, most of them you guys are going to see in the recaps, which if you want to see that, just go to the playlist down in the description. I'm going to include all of the VODs from these live streams that are involved in this series. I'm going to include that all in the playlist with these recaps so you guys can see all that and just see how the deck performs. So thank you guys for joining today for the stat breakdown. If you want to stick around and see the actual ratios and whatnot and number theory breakdown of this deck, I've got a whole notebook here dedicated to just calculating this deck and Bastion Masawing the crap out of this toolbox deck. If you guys want to see any of that, be sure to stick around, check out the playlist, subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoy it so I know to keep making this series, and I am absolutely loving this deck so much. So, once again, if you guys want to see all that, links are all down in the description for you, and I can't wait to see you guys all in the next part of this series. Remember, good fun, have luck.
I'm a love giver.